Going to talk here for a little bit about boys' favorite books and women bigots. As far as I can tell, they're lying about boys' favorite books. All right, it's my Substack. Okay, these books, here's just books about reading. There's phonics, teaching kids to spell, teaching kids to read, foundations of reading, the Ohio testing. And this is Ned Andrews' book. He was a spelling bee champion, became a lawyer, and a book about basically just spelling. He talks about spelling bees in particular. But my opinion is we don't spend nearly enough time on teaching children to spell. And of course, we've got some pretty bad teachers and teaching practices over time. When one of my grandsons was taken and put into remedial reading, they started teaching him phonics. Now that was 15 or more years ago, and that was the first time I learned that they had stopped teaching phonics. That's how I learned. All right, so my wife's favorite novel now is The Snow Child. Mine is still Lonesome Dove, has been this entire millennium. Well, before that, I had others. Cat's Cradle, Arthur C. Clarke's 2001. Now, as a boy, this is what I'm really talking about. I like By the Great Horn Spoon by Sid Fleischman. That was the first novel my mother let me stay up late and read. It's 1964. Danny Dunn and the Homework Machine was published back in 58, but I didn't read it until after I read By the Great Horn Spoon. And then 1966, I read Hold Zero by Jean Craighead George. When I read Hold Zero in 1966, it became my new favorite novel. And it was also the favorite of all my young guy friends. We had a little clique of guys. We were all athletes and readers into science. All of the guys either became, if they didn't finish a degree, they worked in avionics or electronics, or they became electrical engineers, economists, or something to do with science. So that's 66. So 34 years later, or thereabouts, at the turn of the millennium, I read that the author Joanne, or J.K. Rowling, had fogged up her name because she was told that boys didn't read books written by girls. So she wanted to make it uncertain if it was a boy or a girl who wrote that book, Harry Potter. Now, I have never observed that. I don't believe it's true. I've never found anybody tell me that their child, a boy, wouldn't read books written by girls. Now, when I was 10, my favorite novel was written by a girl, Jean Craighead George. It was that Hold Zero I just mentioned. My son's favorite novel when he was 10 was written by a girl, Madeline L'Engle, Wrinkle in Time. My grandson's favorite novel at age 10 was Jean Craighead George's My Side of the Mountain. A different grandson, his favorite novel was Divergent by Veronica Roth. I don't know if there's any support for the claim that boys don't read novels written by girls. It's just, I've never heard of it. And And as an adult, like, my dad sold industrial chemicals for industry. I grew up with a periodic table of elements on the walls. Dad would check them all the time, even though he could recite the whole thing without looking. Anyway, he read Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, and he changed his career because of that. He didn't want to be part of the pollution problem. And of course, when I was old enough, I read it. And I read it, I'm still in school, and it just knocked your socks off. So, as a child or adult, I just don't know anybody that won't read a book because it's written by a woman, by a man, written by a woman. Now, the thing is, I ask bookstore owners, women bookstore owners, and women librarians if boys won't read novels written by women, and none have said they've ever observed that. However, two different owners of two different bookstores, this was in Oklahoma, back near that turn of the millennium, said that bigoted women come into their stores all the time and they won't read fiction written by men, and they say they want to support women by boycotting men. Now, the bookstore owners thought that stupid, but they wanted me to know there are a lot of bigoted women that won't read novels written by men, so I might want to consider using a pseudonym for my fiction. And I'm not saying if I did or didn't. Anyway, this still astonishes me to this day. And, when I invite comments, usually I hear from the outliers, the really bigoted women, stuff like that. But I'm not going to block, you can share your view. I would like some facts. I mean, I've just never observed this. It's possible small boys, they go through this phase where girls, that's just like another species, cough. And, but they grow out of it. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about a phase. By the time they're 10, all the boys I've I've actually seen grow up reading, never had any problem. By age 10, although all these are pretty smart guys, age 12, they're kind of already starting to leave behind the stuff of childhood. Good stuff. Danny Does the Homework Machine. A Wrinkle in Time. Old Zero. My Side of the Mountain. Divergent. Silent Spring. Good reading.